Yes.
McDermott.
Aye.
Parker.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Open meeting compliance statement.
I, the undersigned clerk of the Board of Education of the Alva Independent School District Number 1, Woods County, Oklahoma, certify that prior to December the 15th of the last calendar year, the date, time, and place of this regular meeting was filed in the office of the county clerk of Woods County, Oklahoma. I also certify that at least 24 hours prior to this meeting, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, notice of the date, time, and place and agenda of this meeting was posted in prominent public view at the location of the meeting.
Consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature are normally approved by one board vote unless any board member desires to have a separate vote on any or all of these items. The consent agenda consists of the discussion, consideration, and approval of the following. Addition of any items of new business to the agenda.
There are none.
Minutes of the March 2nd, 2020 regular meeting. Approval of the finance report. Approval of the activity fund report. Approval of the activity fund fundraisers. Approval of the activity fund account transfers. Approval of the child nutrition report. And declare any of the following items as surplus.
Okay, we'll start with, 3.2, our minutes from the March 2nd, 2020 regular meeting, and I have not seen any errors with those minutes. Our finance report, all of our investments are current and up to date. To give you a little bit of an update on our estimate of needs, we're about 92% collected, with 3 months left to go. We'll mention that again, gross production, we are 1.1 million down as compared to last year to this year from March to March. So that's been a significant decrease. And one thing to note in that is we have not really seen at this point our $20 a barrel oil yet, so we expect that to continue to decrease. That's just something to be mindful of as we move forward. Our activity fund report, as we've been with the school closure, obviously not as many activities going on. I will tell you that right before we left for spring break and then the closing, we did have track that was collecting money for t-shirts, and so you'll see an increase in their activity fund account. Just mentioned to you, that is one of the many things that we're looking at. How do we get those t-shirts and those things that are purchased back out to people? That is under consideration. We recognize we need to do that. It's coming up with the process and procedure to do so. There are no fundraisers this month. We have no, inter-account transfers. Just might mention for child nutrition report, Verlita's still out, but I just might mention our food service staff has been amazing. We have served over 1,200 meals in the last 2 weeks. Averaged, about 150 deliveries a day. And so that's been a really good service for our community. Last week, we averaged total serving 185 students, and this, our second week of doing that, we were at 234. And so it's been a good service for our community. We try to remind people that from 18 and under, that's a free service. And so please take advantage of this, and they can email or contact the school, and we'd be happy to prepare a meal for them.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the delivery, are we using school vehicles to do that, or are people using their own personal? Is that?
School vehicles to do that. And so what we did our first 2 weeks, we had our volunteers. We have 3 routes, 2 routes in town, and then we drive to Carmen and Tacoma and serve students there. This week, we are using some of our support staff to make those deliveries.
Do you have
along with Mr. Ellis.
Do you have plenty of help to do that?
Yes,
I've
we
had
do.
people ask me if you ever needed help delivering them, they'd be happy to come do something to help. So.
And we've had, talk about this later, but at this point in time, that's a good service for our support staff.
Okay.
I appreciate, we are never going to refuse volunteers, and we're always going to need some help with that. We anticipate that the longer the closure extends, the more food we'll be serving, which is a good thing, but we anticipate maybe needing more help.
Okay.
So we'll be in touch.
Okay.
No items of surplus this month. Are there any questions with the consent agenda? If there are none, I would recommend its approval.
I make motion that we accept the consent agenda, item 3.1 to 3.8 as presented.
Second.
Parker,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Kane,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Vote to approve purchase order encumbrances for the following funds for fiscal year 20. General fund number 11 as referenced. Building fund number 21 as referenced. Child nutrition fund number 22 as referenced. And gift fund number 81 as referenced.
And so again, with the school closing, you'll notice on our purchase orders that there are not many. Highlight just a couple for you out of 4.1, our general fund. Purchase order number 616 is Ignite Physical Therapy. That's our contract through the remainder of the school year. 619, right before spring break, we had some scrubbers that went down at 3 of our sites, high school, middle school, Longfellow, and so those are to be repaired. And then number 20, our purchase order 620, R&T diesel repair, that is to repair some of our activity buses. We have one substitute payroll from our general fund. In our building fund, Aimright Testing and Engineering, that was some soil testing that is still to be done. It has not been completed yet. One of the things that's happening on some of these items is folks being able to travel and come up and complete work is slower than normal. And so what they're going to be doing is testing the areas around the track and field, and part of that's for moving those lights. 4.3 Child Nutrition Fund, purchase order number 31 is our fee for commodities, and then we do not have anything out of the gift fund. Are there any questions about the purchase order encumbrances?
I have a question on the building fund with that.
Yes.
Vendor, since the service hasn't been rendered yet, do we, by approving this, we're approving payment to them without the service? Is that
They won't,
standard?
so we've encumbered the money, but the work hasn't been completed, and so they will, when they complete the work, they'll invoice us, and that's what they'll pay.
Entertain a motion.
Make the motion to approve encumbrances 4.1 through 4.4.
Second.
Parker,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Kane,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Superintendent's report.
I want to begin by just talking a little bit about our staff, and I recognize that food service employees have been incredible over the last 2 weeks. They've done a lot of work and spent a lot of time. Support staff today was cleaning and getting personal belongings together and out of lockers and out of desks, and that is a chore, and so we appreciate them. The administrative team has worked tirelessly from feels like a couple months ago to now during this closure, and so everyone's done a great job and been a tremendous help. And so in a minute I'll turn it over to Mr. Feely and have him talk just a little bit about the distance learning plan and how as curriculum coordinator they manage that. I want to communicate something that I wasn't able to before spring break. We met with a food service company back in March. It seems like a long time ago, but I guess it really wasn't. And with our cooks and with our administrative staff. And it was really kind of a fact-finding mission. There was no decision made. It was just an opportunity to sit down with a food service company and talk about services that they could provide us. And so our cooks were all involved in that discussion. They were able to ask some questions of that company, and it was a really good time, and I got a lot of positive feedback. And so we continue to explore that option. No decision has been made. That is it's a process, a bidding process. You have to complete a request for proposal and then bid it out, and that takes time. And so I don't anticipate bringing anything to the board until June. And so I just want to update that to you as a board. I know that our cooks are have been involved in that process and will continue to be involved in that process. I think that is all I have, and so I just want to mention our distance learning before I turn it over to Mr. Feely. So today was our, we called it our first day of school, our first day of new school. And I know Mr. Feely will mention this, but our teachers have done an outstanding job. And the innovation that they've shown in the last week, they had about 5 days to prepare, and I think it's changed us forever as a district. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Feely and let him talk just a little bit about the timeline and how all this came about.
So, March 17th, we were called in for an emergency webinar with SDE, and she said we're going to make a motion to close schools the following day, and that we should begin planning for distance learning. I don't know, how much we all really believed that at the time, but there were several questions that popped in all of our heads by that point. We were on several webinars between then and March 27th, and March 27th is when the State Department released their framework for distance learning. And it was meant as a guide to local districts to create their own. It was not meant to be a top-down, this is what you have to do. They wanted it to respond to each community's context. So we had our first committee meetings that day, right after that webinar, so we really hadn't even had a chance to look at the framework yet. But there were several questions that we posed to the committees. And so initially, we had 2 committees. The first committee, early childhood, was pre-K through 3rd grade. And then we had a secondary committee of 4th grade through 12th grade. The reason that we broke it down that way was Google Classroom was used pretty heavily at Lincoln and different places throughout the middle school and high school. So we knew that we had expertise and support to use Google Classroom as our learning management system in those buildings. The Early Childhood Committee was tasked with coming up with an age-appropriate platform for those grades. And we posed several questions to them. There were some teachers that were experimenting with Facebook groups, closed Facebook groups, and those were pretty popular, and they were doing some really good things with those. We had some teachers that were using YouTube channels, and then we broached the idea, should we take Google Classroom all the way down to pre-K? And we felt like there were some roadblocks there, mainly email access and whether parents would want their kids to have an email address yet. So during that committee, we decided to go with neither of those 3. We ended up going with a program called Seesaw that was basically Google Classroom for little kids. And it created a good place for teachers to be able to post videos, to communicate with their students, to make assignments. There was a lot of pre-made type of lessons in there. And so that committee ultimately came to that conclusion that Seesaw would be our platform. Now, that being said, there were kind of some major hurdles, obviously, that you have to get over to pull this off. One was device access. We have spent a great deal of money over the last few years purchasing Chromebooks and other devices. So we felt like device access was not going to be a major hurdle. It was going to be a matter of checking them out and getting them to the kids that needed them. The second and maybe bigger hurdle was internet access. So just kind of going into this, we had to survey the community to find out really where we were at. So we created a Google survey. Trevor Lording created that. That was one of our action steps out of our committee. And we sent that out on a Saturday and publicized it pretty well. And within an hour, we had 300 and some odd responses, and that would be 300 homes. At this point, we have 611 responses, and we feel like that pretty well probably covered everybody. And we found that 80% of kids had a device in their home that wasn't one of the school's devices. And then we found out that 90% of kids had internet access in their home. So it wasn't as big a hurdle as maybe we thought it was going to be. So Trevor took that data and he pulled it out and he somehow managed to stick it into a Google map, and it pinpointed everybody's location. And that way we could identify the best providers for those areas, because it's not always uniform across town or outside of town. We found that 40 of those, about 60 kids didn't have internet access, and about 40 of them were in town and 20 outside of town. So then we started researching with the internet service providers. Suddenlink and AT&T are offering 2 free months of internet, and there's no annual commitment. Parents can terminate that contract at the end of the school year, May 22nd, and so free internet for those kids that did not prior have service. If they already had service, then they don't qualify. So then it became, how are we going to reach the kids in the country? Well, we've looked at hotspots, we've looked into working with T-Mobile, we've looked at a lot of different things, but what we ended up coming to after we researched it was the 5 major cell phone providers offer a plan through the Stay Connected or Keep America Connected plan. The FCC basically asked them to not disconnect people during this time. And so they're not charging for data overages. In fact, most of them are bumping their data plans from 2 to 20 gigs a month. So parents can use their smartphones as hotspots in the home to get internet access. So we feel like we're getting almost to the point where we've got everybody covered. The only question is, what about a family who doesn't have a smartphone? And that we didn't have in the survey result, didn't think that far down the road. So at this point, we haven't been contacted by any parents that are in that boat, but that's the kind of the last hurdle to get over. Grading, part of the framework for the grading was that it would be a no-fault grading policy. No fault of the kids that this happened, so this is only an opportunity to enhance their grades. Nobody is going to see their grade drop. So all buildings printed their grades, reports out before we started this so that we know where they were supposed to be at. Attendance, taking attendance ended on March 12th, and so there'll be no attendance taken. Any ADM and ADA calculations made for funding, basically we, based on that, made March 12th. So then the next question was professional development. You know, we know that we have expertise throughout our buildings. What about the teachers that maybe are not as experienced? So we created a Google Classroom course about Google Classroom. And the committees were all added as teachers in that Google Classroom. And we basically created a step-by-step course for beginning in this platform. And then we added all the teachers that were not on the committee into the program as a student. And they don't have to go through the entire course. They can pick and choose what modules that they need. So topics from getting started and helping parents to navigate it, to setting up their classroom, some of the State Department resources, lesson plan template, video conference etiquette, which I think is huge. We're going to be asking kids to video conference, and this will be a good experience for them. And we'll be using Google Meet, which is a free service within our Google Apps that we can use. It's very similar to Zoom. And just a whole list of things, embedding links into the classroom, using self-grading quizzes, creating PDFs so that they can send a PDF to be marked up. One of the biggest ones that we've found is Screencastify. So our teachers, and it's been really cool to watch our teachers share across buildings and collaborate in ways that it's kind of odd to me, and I guess maybe it shouldn't be, but in our isolation, we've collaborated more than when we were down the hall. And maybe just because we're seeking some back and forth with people, I don't know. But The Screencastify app allows a teacher to video their computer and show people step-by-step, show kids and show teachers step-by-step how to navigate this program. So then I have a few example lessons here that this would be Mrs. C had put together a little screencasting video where she is showing her kids how to navigate and find their assignments. And just fantastic stuff that, like Mr. Argo said, we will be changed forever because of this. And nobody wanted to be in this position, but we sure should see the silver lining in it too. The next two things that we had to cover were tech support, knowing that we were going to have tech snafus, kids having trouble logging in. We have run everything through our IT ticketing system. Trevor and Adam and Caitlin have been troubleshooting things like that throughout the day, and it's gone smoother than maybe we had first thought that it might. Prior to that, though, we had to get devices out, so Mrs. Martini and Mrs. Tucker came up with a device checkout system that we've been doing for the last 3 days. And so we feel like we're getting the devices out to kids. Teachers were given the plan and asked to make contact with their kids and parents about Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, and they've been continually in contact. We had daily faculty meetings last week to kind of continue to answer questions, and we feel like we've got a really good plan in place that appears to be working at this point. We know that there will be some other hiccups, and at some point we'll send out a feedback survey in a couple of weeks and see what areas we can improve, because really this could be potentially a dry run for next year depending on how this thing falls. So we just want to make sure that we're prepared in that event. Do you guys have any questions?
No, but I would like to commend everybody involved, because this is a huge undertaking. And I know in 40 years of my experience in the world of education, never faced this. Faced a lot of things in my life as a teacher, but not this. And so it's a real learning curve, and I appreciate the support. And I think you're right. I think it'll make us better, because we've had to reach people that maybe we didn't reach out to before because they were the experts in Google or something. And I thought, I'm going to have to do that. And so let them know that we appreciate it, because it's not been easy. Change is not easy.
I would like to commend our committee members, because
Yes.
not only did they give us good feedback, but they helped to create the modules in our classroom, and they have reached out to teachers, and teachers have reached out to them, and so they've been a great professional
It
development.
appeared to me that it happened rather quickly. I mean, it wasn't like someone sat around thinking, we'll wait till the mousetrap goes off. They were on it, and people were ready to jump and do what they had to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a parent who, we were doing this morning, it was incredibly easy to use. The Seesaw kids loved it. They went in and they knew exactly, they've never done it before. This is their first time on it, and they were incredibly comfortable on it. It was very well put together. All the teachers collaborating. You could see the collaboration within the module. I mean, it was evident, so it was very good. So thank you for that as well, from kind of the parent side of things.
I don't think we'll be able to adequately express our appreciation to each one of them as we sit back and we are marveling at the way they just picked up and gone on. But hopefully at some point we will be able to express to them what it means to us as a board and all of you. I know that as far as from an administrative standpoint, I know what your spring break
I was
was.
going to say, they didn't get a spring
So,
break, because this all hit, and if you were going anywhere, you didn't.
Yeah,
So
it is
thank you.
crazy, but we do appreciate it. Our kids they'll be winners, we thought so. So, thank you very much. Okay, any communications items of current business? Do we have any of those?
Yes.
Next
Yeah, next agenda, 6.1.
item of current business, discussion with possible board action to enter into the win-win negotiations with the Alva Education Association and the Alva Board of Education for fiscal year '21.
So this is, they attached a letter here with Candy. They are working on a Google survey. I believe they have completed a Google survey. And so we will figure out a way and a time to get together and meet. And so that will be another first for all of us. But I would recommend this approval so that we can meet and begin negotiations.
Motion?
I would make that motion.
Second.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Parker.
Yes.
6.2, discussion with possible board action, vote to approve the following contracts for fiscal year '21. OKTLE, Oklahoma Teacher and Leaders Effectiveness. 6.2.1, BMAS.Inc., Municipal Accounting Systems Incorporated. And that's Saco Regional Payroll Insurance and our Student Information Systems. And 6.2.2, Clearwater Enterprises LLC, this contract reduces the gas prices, saves the district about over $8,000 last year.
So both of these contracts have been good contracts for Alva Public Schools. Our municipal accounting system is also our student information system, and which is also, we found, part of Google Classroom. And so it's integrated with everything that we've done. We kind of stumbled upon that a little bit. So it's been good for us. And then Clearwater Enterprises, that is our contract with a gas company. And so I would recommend the approval of both of those contracts for FY '21.
Make a motion to approve 6.2.1 and 6.2.2.
Second.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Parker.
Yes.
Any new business?
There's
Signing of documents approved by earlier action. I hear a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second that.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Parker.